there may have been a time 50 years ago when we needed to affirmatively take steps to correct long-term racial bias in institutions of higher education. But I can tell you, as the father of 3 college graduates, those days are long over.
In response to the fact that black and brown people are paid less than white people for the exact same work, this guy claims affirmative action and thousands of Asians who got shut out of colleges for underqualified blacks say differently. As an Asian American, I can tell you this is a lie, and here are 3 very good reasons. Asian Americans are 6% of America's population, but 26% of those who got admitted to Harvard. Doesn't sound like they're too oppressed here. Point 2, 43% of white students at Harvard are legacies. That's more than Asian, Hispanic, and black students combined. But speaking of unqualified students, 75% of these legacy students would not have gotten admission if they weren't legacy students. They're the ones taking seats for more qualified black, Asian, and more qualified white students. Point 3 is the icing on the cake. The demographic that benefits most from affirmative action are white women. More than black, Asian, and Hispanic people combined. Racists know they don't have a leg to stand on, so they want black and brown people to fight against one another. Don't let them do that. Class dismissed.
I'm still making my way through reading the opinion, but I am glad that the U.S. Supreme Court has finally put an end to race-based affirmative action in college admissions, one of the most disastrous and failed policy experiments of the last century. America is founded on merit, and we need to put the merit back into America. Now, I want you to mark my words on this, because it's really already happening. These elite universities have already prepared for this decision and are preparing shadow practices to achieve the same goal, but in a way that evades accountability from the law, deprioritizing the importance of test scores, using zip codes and other creative information to be able to achieve those same goals. That's also unlawful. As U.S. President, I will direct the Department of Justice to end these illegal practices. And I'll go further to rescind Lyndon Johnson's disastrous Executive Order 11246, which extended these race-based quota systems into the private sector.
Good afternoon. Thank you as always for your kindness and for your insights. Preventing considerations of race will prevent racism. Those are the words from Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson in her dissent against the majority of the Supreme Court's decision striking down affirmative action in colleges and universities across our country. What she's saying is that if we simply pretend that racism doesn't exist, that will eradicate it. But my friends, that's not just the thinking of the majority of the Supreme Court. That's how millions of our fellow citizens see racism. The best way to deal with it is simply pretend it doesn't exist. Let that sink in. We're experiencing a dramatic shift in our country, a regression, where governors like mine, Ron DeSantis, believe instead of actually having students talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we'll just ban schools and universities from talking about it at all. This is where we are, my friends. The summer of 2020 ripped the scab off. It revealed that millions of Americans, especially millions of white Americans, were now prepared to deal with the examination of not only systemic racism, but our country's long history of creating it in the first place.
Exactly. You're just you're losing the argument, so you're doing things.
Man. You're triggered.
I'm not triggered. I'm telling you how stupid you are. You're so stupid. Let me respond to you.
Your voice is quavering right now. Your voice is literally shaking right now.
No, that's your shitty Wi-Fi and your Section 8 housing. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, guys, that train is never late. That train is never late. You see?
So the Supreme Court ruled today against using race as a way for college admissions. And yet, Michelle Obama got a lot to say. Ain't gonna read it. Or Michael, sorry, my bad. But then you got Obama, her hubby, his hubby, had this to say. Affirmative action was never a complete answer in the drive towards a more just society. But for generations of students who had been systematically excluded from most of America's key institutions, it gave us the chance to show we more than deserved a seat at the table. In the wake of the Supreme Court's recent decision, it's time to redouble our efforts.
This is a great ruling for students from all walks of life, every race, every ethnicity. Students will be judged based on their hard work and their merit, not just the color of their skin. Colleges may try to get around bans on racial preferences. They may still try to find some sort of ratio of students based on skin color to admit into their schools. This is not what the American dream is about. We should be judging students based on how well they've prepared to get into post-secondary education and what they want their future to look like based on their efforts. This is what brings hope for the future.
Affirmative action has absolutely no effect on black men. That's why you won't hear black men complaining that there's no more affirmative action, because the black men didn't benefit from affirmative action. Mostly females benefited from affirmative action. Black and white females particularly benefited from. I mean, black men have many other issues. Like if, something that affected black men, say prison reform or another criminal institution was created or something like that, that would heavily affect black men, because black men are unfortunately in those institutions. But you might see 4 or 5 black men complaining about there's no more affirmative action, because it doesn't really benefit black men. I mean, so you're not gonna hear them complaining about it. I mean, it just doesn't. If there was another law, criminal law created like Rockefeller or 3-strike law or something like that, that would heavily, then you'll hear a lot of black men complaining about it because it heavily affects them. But you're not going to hear too many, black men complaining about there's no more affirmative action. That's like me complaining about there's going to be no more artificial legs produced. Well, it doesn't. You're not going to hear me complain because I don't have an artificial leg. I mean, it just doesn't affect black men at all.